But when I had a day out here where on a Sunday where the year Westwood won, and him and I had a real.
Thomas Bjørn exposes 7 golfers he absolutely cannot stand. And what he says about them reveals the ugliest side of European golf. The Great Dane built his reputation on brutal honesty. And when it comes to these 7 names, he holds nothing back. From captains he called pathetic to teammates who betrayed the Ryder Cup itself, Bjørn's enemies list reads like a who's who of controversy. These aren't just petty disagreements. They're explosive feuds that tore friendships apart and exposed deep fractures in the game. Let's start with the worst betrayal of all. Henrik Stenson didn't just leave European golf. He abandoned his post as Ryder Cup captain mid-mission, and Thomas Bjørn had to pick up the pieces. In 2022, Stenson accepted one of golf's highest honors when he was named captain for the 2023 Rome matches. He appointed Bjørn as his vice-captain. They started building the team together, sharing strategic plans and sensitive data about players. Then Stenson signed with LIV Golf and everything collapsed. The DP World Tour stripped him of the captaincy immediately. It was a historic humiliation, the first time a sitting captain had been removed. But the real damage went deeper than headlines. Bjørn described the situation as a betrayal, and he meant it. Stenson didn't just quit a job, he violated a sacred trust. The captaincy isn't about money or personal glory, it's about serving your teammates and protecting the legacy of European golf. Stenson took the role knowing full well what it meant, then sold it for a Saudi paycheck. Bjørn was left scrambling to stabilize the team and help find a replacement in Luke Donald. The chaos Stenson created threw months of preparation into the trash. Unlike other LIV defectors who were just players, Stenson held the most important leadership position in European golf. That's what made his decision unforgivable in Bjørn's eyes. You don't accept the captaincy and then abandon ship. The professional relationship between them is completely severed now, and Bjørn's pointed comments about moving forward and loyalty were barely veiled attacks on Stenson's character. Sergio Garcia's defection hit Bjørn differently. This wasn't rage, it was sadness. Garcia and Bjørn were teammates for decades during Europe's golden era of Ryder Cup dominance. They shared locker rooms, celebrated victories, and built what felt like brotherhood. When Garcia joined LIV Golf in 2022 and resigned his DP World Tour membership, he didn't just leave quietly, he lashed out, claiming he wanted to play where he was loved. That narrative wounded Bjørn deeply. Garcia had been nurtured and celebrated by the European Tour his entire career. To turn around and attack the institution while walking out the door felt like rewriting history. Bjørn expressed his frustration publicly, saying it was very sad to receive such treatment for a personal and professional decision. The word choice matters. Sad, not angry. Bjørn saw Garcia as a tragic figure who burned down his own legacy for money. What hurt most was that Garcia's choice effectively ended his Ryder Cup career. To Bjørn, the Ryder Cup represents the pinnacle of professional golf. Trading that for guaranteed cash was incomprehensible. The friendship they built over years dissolved in weeks. Reports describe their current relationship as strained, which is diplomatic language for broken. They'll likely never share a locker room again. And for Bjørn, that loss stings more than any on-course defeat. Ian Poulter built his entire brand on being the Ryder Cup warrior. He called himself the postman because he always delivered. But when Poulter joined LIV Golf, he tried to have it both ways, and Thomas Bjørn wasn't having it. Poulter sued the DP World Tour to maintain his playing rights and argued he should still be eligible for future Ryder Cup teams. Bjørn, serving on the tour's board, took a hardline stance. He publicly emphasized that LIV players were facing the consequences of their own choices. No exceptions, no special treatment. Not even for Ryder Cup legends. Make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment. Do you think Bjørn was right to block Poulter from the Ryder Cup, or should legends get special treatment? Let's hear it. Bjørn went further by advocating for a full rebuild around young committed players like Nicolai Højgaard and Ludvig Åberg. The message to Poulter was clear. You chose to leave. You don't get to come back when it's convenient. Poulter tried to publicly downplay the tension, saying, Thomas is Thomas. He's extremely vocal. We disagree, but we're friends. Bjørn's actions told a different story. By strictly enforcing eligibility rules against his former teammate, Bjørn positioned himself as the institutional enforcer. The conflict wasn't just about rules. It was about Poulter's sense of entitlement. He believed his Ryder Cup legacy should grant him immunity from consequences. Bjørn believed nobody was above the tour's regulations, especially not someone who took Saudi money and then demanded European privileges. Paul Lawrie fired a shot at Thomas Bjørn that exposed uncomfortable truths about European golf's power structure. In 2023, after Henrik Stenson's removal, rumors circulated that Bjørn might return as a caretaker captain to steady the ship. Lawrie, the 1999 Open champion, publicly called the idea a joke, but his criticism went deeper than questioning Bjørn's competence. Lawrie accused the tour of operating as a closed circle, a small clique of friends rotating leadership positions among themselves. Names like Bjørn, Lee Westwood, Darren Clarke, and Paul McGinley kept appearing in key roles while outsiders like Lawrie were ignored. Bjørn took the accusation personally. As someone who prided himself on service to the tour, being labeled part of a cronyism network attacked his integrity directly. To Bjørn, his repeated involvement in tour leadership was about duty and experience. To Lawrie, it looked like a power grab by insiders protecting their territory. This feud wasn't about one decision. It represented a fundamental divide between the tour establishment and those who felt marginalized by it. Lawrie saw fresh candidates being passed over for the same recycled faces. Bjørn saw qualified leaders being asked to serve when crises demanded experience. The tension continues to simmer whenever captaincy discussions arise. Colin Montgomerie and Thomas Bjørn represent opposite philosophies of leadership. Montgomerie, an 8-time Order of Merit winner, led with dominance and entitlement. Bjørn operated as a representative of the players, focused on fairness and collective good. Their friction came to a head during Montgomerie's 2010 captaincy at Celtic Manor, where Bjørn served as vice-captain. On the surface, they worked toward the same goal of victory. Beneath that surface, deep disagreements simmered about politics and locker room management. Montgomerie's style was autocratic. He positioned himself as the center of gravity, making decisions from the top down. He described his own approach as very common sense, but others, including Bjørn, saw it as overly political. Bjørn valued the Band of Brothers ethos where every voice mattered equally. Under Monty's leadership, that organic chemistry felt stifled. The dominant personality didn't leave much room for democratic input. Montgomerie focused on winning at all costs, even if it meant bruising egos along the way. Bjørn cared about long-term team culture, not just short-term results. The locker room tension was palpable. Bjørn has hinted that Montgomerie's management style created unnecessary friction among veterans who expected more collaborative leadership. This wasn't a public explosion like the Woosnam incident. It was a prolonged philosophical disagreement that played out behind closed doors. Bjørn viewed Montgomerie as effective but not admirable, a necessary force for winning but not a model for how the tour should operate. Their relationship remains professionally respectful on the surface, but the underlying tension about how to treat peers has never fully resolved. The 2006 Ryder Cup at the K-Club produced the most explosive public meltdown in European golf history, and Ian Woosnam was at the center of it. Bjørn, ranked 24th in the world and a proven Ryder Cup veteran, believed he deserved one of Woosnam's 2 wildcard picks. The other pick was guaranteed to go to Darren Clarke, who had recently lost his wife to cancer. What happened next wasn't about the decision itself. It was about how Woosnam delivered the news. Bjørn expected a formal meeting or at minimum a respectful phone call. What he got was 20 seconds in a hotel bar. Woosnam walked in, told Bjørn that Lee had won twice at the K-Club, so he was going with him, then walked out. 20 seconds in a bar. To Bjørn, the setting and brevity were profound insults to his professional standing. He felt Woosnam was incapable of doing the right thing and lacked basic leadership skills. The next morning, Bjørn unleashed a media assault that stunned the golf world. He called Woosnam's captaincy the most pathetic he had ever seen. He said the man was barmy and accused him of failing to communicate with the team or contenders. Bjørn declared his relationship with Woosnam completely dead and said he had lost all respect for him. The comments were visceral, personal, and unprecedented. The European Tour fined Bjørn a substantial sum to protect the sanctity of the captaincy. Under pressure and likely realizing he had jeopardized his future with the tour, Bjørn issued a retraction the next day. He apologized and claimed the comments were made in the heat of the moment. Woosnam confronted the team in the locker room, asking if they supported Bjørn's views. The team rallied around their captain, and Europe won comfortably at the K-Club. But the damage was done. The barmy comment permanently altered public perception of Woosnam's leadership, casting him as chaotic. It also painted Bjørn as volatile, even if passionate. They have shared public spaces since then, but the relationship was shattered in that hotel bar and never recovered. Mark James gave Thomas Bjørn his first taste of Ryder Cup heartbreak, and the bitterness never fully healed. In 1999, Bjørn finished 11th on the points list, just outside automatic qualification. Convention said the player in 11th place, especially one in good form, should be the primary wildcard candidate. James had other ideas. He picked Jesper Parnevik and Andrew Coulthard instead. While Parnevik was an established star, Coulthard was a Scottish rookie ranked lower than Bjørn. The decision was controversial from the start. What created lasting resentment wasn't the pick itself, but the cold silence that followed. James never called Bjørn to explain the decision or offer encouragement. There was no conversation, no acknowledgement of Bjørn's efforts throughout the qualifying campaign. It was a bureaucratic omission that Bjørn interpreted as profound disrespect. The situation got worse when James barely used Coulthard. He benched him for the first 3 sessions of play. Coulthard didn't strike a ball until Sunday singles, where he was matched against Tiger Woods and lost. Bjørn watched from home as the player chosen over him sat unused while Europe suffered the infamous collapse at Brookline. This experience created what can only be called foundational trauma for Bjørn. It taught him the Ryder Cup selection process could be arbitrary and political. James's aloof management style, which created a clear divide between the playing 10 and the bench 2, became Bjørn's anti-model for leadership. When Bjørn captained Europe in 2018, his obsession with communication and ensuring every player felt valued traced directly back to the cold shoulder he received from Mark James in 1999. The relationship between them remains professional but distant, a scar that never fully healed even decades later. These 7 feuds map the evolution of Thomas Bjørn from excluded competitor to institutional guardian. In his early years with James and Woosnam, Bjørn fought for meritocracy and competent leadership. His anger was the anger of someone left out who knew he deserved better. As he moved into tour leadership roles, his conflicts with Montgomery and Laurie centered on how power should be distributed. He resisted autocratic control and defended against accusations of cronyism. In the modern era, his battles with Garcia, Poulter, and Stenson became existential fights for the soul of European golf itself. The LIV defections forced Bjørn to choose between friendship and institution. He chose the institution every time. With Garcia, he expressed sadness over a broken brotherhood. With Poulter, he enforced consequences without exception. With Stenson, he condemned betrayal of the highest office in European golf. These weren't easy choices. They cost him relationships built over decades. But Bjørn believes the Ryder Cup is bigger than any individual player or personal connection. Critics accuse Bjørn of holding grudges and being too harsh. Supporters see him as the last honest voice in a sport that has become too corporate and calculated. The truth probably lives somewhere between those extremes. Bjørn says exactly what he thinks in a world where most players are media trained into saying nothing. He called a captain pathetic because he cared about the quality of leadership. He called a teammate's defection sad because he cared about the team. He clashed with Monty because he cared about locker room culture. These 7 golfers represent the boundaries of Bjørn's tolerance. They're the men who, in his view, placed ego, money, or incompetence above the collective good of European golf. Whether you see Bjørn as a guardian or grudge holder depends on what you value more: loyalty to institutions or loyalty to individuals. What's undeniable is that Bjørn has never wavered from his principles, even when defending them cost him friendships and public favor. The fights with James and Woosnam taught Bjørn how not to lead. The tensions with Montgomery and Laurie forced him to define his own leadership philosophy. The breaks with Garcia, Poulter, and Stenson demanded he decide what mattered most when friendship and duty conflicted. Every time, Bjørn chose the institution. That choice defines his legacy as much as his 2018 captaincy victory does. Thomas Bjørn stands as European golf's happy warrior, bruised by battles with his own peers, but still defending the Ryder Cup from threats both external and internal. His list of enemies isn't a collection of petty grievances. It's a roadmap of the tour's defining crises over 3 decades. The feuds cost him, but they also revealed his core belief that the game is bigger than any player's ego or bank account. So what do you think? Was Bjørn right to call out these 7 golfers, or did his honesty cross into grudge holding? Should captains like Woosnam and James have communicated better, or was Bjørn too sensitive about being left out? And when it comes to LIV defectors, did Bjørn do the right thing by enforcing consequences, or should legends like Poulter and Garcia get special treatment? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a conversation worth having because it goes to the heart of what we value in professional golf: legacy or money, loyalty or freedom, institution or individual. Bjørn made his choice clear. Now you make yours.